Hi everyone, so after going through lots of characters, I'm through Act 3 and mucking about in the cruel replays of Acts 1, 2 to 3. This is because Acts 4 to 6 haven't been implemented yet, because early access basically means beta. And so when you get through the third act, you just repeat the first three acts again, but with slightly nastier mobs. That being said, because you've now got better abilities and passives, the experience so far seems to be just as easier, if not easier in some ways. And this is the point where I sort of knew, okay, I finally cracked it now. When I could kill this molten boss, which I tried and failed so many times before on other characters, this is the point where I knew, got it now, made it. But I wanted to talk about some of the dead ends I went down in getting there. Now, I've said before, I've created quite a few characters. The class I'm waiting for is the Templar, so in the meantime, I'm not particularly attached to any of the others. The first character I got into Act 3 was a Ranger, then I hit a bit of a brick wall, then I did a Frost Monk, and almost at the end of Act 3, same thing. I could have struggled on, but it just occurred to me that it's as quick just to level another character first for the first three acts if I've got a better plan than it would have taken to fix the character I'd made. So what were the problems? Well, first was equipment. Each time I've run through a new character, I've learned more about stacking the odds in my favour with gear. Gearing in Path of Exile 2 is massively random, and every element of it is pretty much random, unless you're into trading. Compared with Diablo 4, for example, where you have more agency. Take Chaos Orbs. Now, these allow you to change an affix on gear in Path of Exile 2. It's the equivalent of enchanting in Diablo 4, which has a random element to it. But in Diablo 4, you choose which property you want to change. And when it gives you the random changes on offer, you get a choice. And one of the choices is leave it as it is. It still costs you the reagents. There's still a cost to that. They're gone. But you don't risk getting rid of a good property or changing a bad one for a worse one. With Path of Exile 2, you have no agency. The Chaos Orb gets rid of a random affix. It is gambling like you wouldn't believe. It will even get rid of a good one. And you cannot choose to cancel the deal. It's not like it's going to randomly say, right, we're going to get rid of this and replace it with this. And you can go, oh, I'm not sure about that. Yeah, let's just cancel it. Even if that consumes the orb still. You don't get that. It just changes it and then you snookered. And all aspects of gearing are random. Upgrading a normal to a magic item is fine because you get loads of those reagents. But anything from magic to rare and above means consuming reagents, which you do not have in abundance as you're going through the campaign. So unless you get lucky, you have to actually put a lot of thought into gearing. Every time you level, you're going to have to take time out to check out the vendors and see if they've got something which looks promising. If they do, you have to get it and try and upgrade it. And more often than not, it's a dead end. You just end up selling it or disenchanting it again. Whatever, you need to junk the equipment because Lady Luck was not on your side. And that's going to happen almost all the time. But if you keep doing it, you will eventually get something better. And this is necessary because it's the only way you can reasonably stack the odds in your favour of getting something better. The character I finished Act 3 on first was a second Frost Monk who went through much more easily than my first Frost Monk. Even when it was 2 levels below my first Frost Monk, its stats were way better. Resistances and especially skill damage much higher. That was because I'd learned lessons about gearing and did a much better job on the second monk. But that wasn't the only problem. After all, if that was the only issue, I could have just leveled a different class, been on the lookout for gear that would also be good for the monk, and then gone back to that first monk once I'd collected better gear so I didn't get smashed by mobs too easily. And the weapon is massively important. It's not just that more damage means you kill the mobs or bosses more quickly, and so need to dodge dangerous mechanics for a shorter period of time. Like, better weapons allow you to build up those stun mechanics more quickly, which means the boss isn't actually a threat for most of the time at all. So having a weaker weapon just compounds your problems. But the other issue is passives. The passive tree is huge, and there are different ways a novice player could approach them. You might naturally just look at your options every time you level and pick the node, which seems to be the best for you at that particular time. But then you'll just end up grouping around the starting area. Some of the strongest passives need long-term planning. They're some distance away. You need to make a beeline for them, which might mean taking passives which, might boost you a bit, but they're not amazing. You wouldn't normally pick them. And this is where a new player has little chance of success. There are so many. And not many new players are just going to sit down and look at these 1,500 talents and chart a path. And if they did, you don't really know how to judge the strength of them until you know the mechanics well, which you're not going to learn until you've played the game a lot, which is hard if you go down dead ends and produce a weaker character and then hit a brick wall. The difference in damage between my first and second monk in Act 3 was not just down to the weapon. I swapped weapons just to see what it would be like, and there was still a significant difference. It's because the passives on my second monk were also better. I'd also say the support gems and choice of abilities, but you can easily change those. That was not a reason for me making an entirely new monk. The passives was ultimately what made me roll again, though. Yeah, I'd followed a guide for choosing passives on both of those monks. The second guide I followed was way better. It was a really good one. In fact, actually, it's the best guide I found on any class at all. But how to tell as a new player? Veteran Path of Exile players may know, well, they may know more to do it themselves, but they may know the go-to experts who will not steer you wrong. But as someone new to it all myself, all I see are guides. And I believe them when they're showing you what they did. I believe that they actually succeeded using their own advice. But some are more beginner-friendly than others. There's no obvious, well-signposted go-to place for builds which a beginner will most easily be able to pick up. So you end up kissing a lot of frogs before you get to your prince. If you're lucky, you only needed to change some passives and will spend the gold doing so. If you're unlucky, the cost of replacing basically all of the missteps could well be taking out your entire stash of gold, which therefore makes it difficult to then get the gear, or you might not be able to afford it at all. I noticed that grinding gear games have talked about making passive refunds cheaper. This is absolutely essential, but I would say they need to make them a lot cheaper. The game is hugely enjoyable, and I've said before, I don't mind bouncing around on different characters right now. The class I'm mostly interested in isn't out, and half the campaign hasn't even been implemented into what is actually a beta version. So I'm treating it as beta testing, because essentially that is what it is. But when it comes out of early release, I do think the combination of virtually no agency over gearing and an incredibly complex talent tree, which is expensive to scrub out and start again, is a problem. I appreciate that the games developers want to be a bit more hardcore than some other games designers. They're not going to make it like Diablo 4, of course not, it's a different game. But given the difference that your choice of passes can make, even after just like 40 levels, to the strength of your character, I see no reason not to allow people to at least change them easily. Like, what's the big deal with letting people change passives? You can only do it in town anyway. Like, you can change skills with ease. You can even change skills out in the field. Why not passives between adventures? But let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I'll see you later.